Dr. Grussing, are you ready?
Yes.
Thank you.
Members of the subcommittee, I appreciate this opportunity to present the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, that's NATHPO, our recommendations for fiscal year 2020 appropriations. My name is Valerie Grussing. I'm the new executive director. In this year of transition for the organization, we have some grand and exciting plans, some of which rely on this subcommittee's continued support for the budgetary needs of tribal cultural preservation activities. We recommend 4 key areas for funding, and in my time today, I'll just elaborate on the first one. That's the National Park Service, the Historic Preservation Fund. We recommend a tribal line item of $20 million. For some background information, what are Tribal Historic Preservation Officers? We call them THPOs. They're appointed by federally recognized tribal governments that have entered into an agreement with the Department of the Interior to assume the federal compliance role for the State Historic Preservation Officer per the National Historic Preservation Act. Tribal historic preservation plans are grounded in self-determination, traditional knowledge, and cultural values, and may involve projects to improve Indian schools, roads, health clinics, and housing, and anything else that needs to happen in Indian country. THPOs are the first responders when a sacred site is threatened, when an ancestral home is uncovered, and when Native ancestors are disturbed by development. THPOs are often responsible for their tribe's oral history programs and operating tribal museums and cultural centers. They perform many functions and responsibilities in Indian country, and through their activities represent an active expression and exercise of tribal sovereignty. What is NATHPO? The National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers is a national nonprofit membership association of tribal governments that are committed to preserving, rejuvenating, and improving the status of tribal cultures and cultural practices by supporting native languages, arts, dances, music, oral traditions, cultural properties, tribal museums and cultural centers, and libraries. NATHPO assists tribal communities in protecting their cultural properties, whether they are naturally occurring in the landscape or are man-made structures. The Historic Preservation Fund, administered by the National Park Service, we recommend a tribal line item of $20 million. This is a pretty big increase. As of January 1st of this year, there are 180, I've got 4 in my written statement. As of this week, there's 185. There's more every year. Recognized by the Park Service, that's the THPOs. Each THPO represents an affirmative step by an Indian tribe to assume the responsibilities of the state historic preservation officers for their respective tribal lands, as authorized by Congress in the 1992 amendments to the National Historic Preservation Act. Collectively, these tribes exercise responsibilities over a land base exceeding 50 million acres in 30 states. The Historic Preservation Fund is the sole source of federal funding for THPOs and the main source of funding to implement the nation's historic preservation programs. HPF revenue is generated from oil and gas development on the Outer Continental Shelf. We recommend $20 million to carry out the requirements of the National Historic Preservation Act. This would provide the nearly 200 federally recognized THPOs an average of $100,000 to run their programs. That's their whole program. Funding THPOs and staff creates jobs, it generates economic development, and it spurs community revitalization. It also facilitates environmental and historic review processes that are required, including for infrastructure permitting. That means when agencies and project applicants call, someone is there to pick up the phone and do the work. What is at stake here? As the number of Indian tribes with THPO programs increases, the amount of HPF funding appropriated and then apportioned to THPOs must keep pace. Native American cultural properties on millions of acres of tribal lands are at risk. For the past several years, each THPO program has been asked to conduct important federal compliance work with fewer financial resources. In the first year of congressional funding support for THPOs, which was 1996 when the program was created, the original 12 THPOs each received an average of $83,000, while in fiscal year 18, 179 THPOs received an average of $64,000 to run their whole program. There are expected to be almost 200 TIPOs in FY20. Reconnecting Native peoples to their cultural heritage, traditions, and places has the power to help heal deep generational wounds. To continue historic preservation and cultural revitalization in Indian country, it is essential that TIPO programs receive increased funding to meet the increasing need. And I've got a chart that demonstrates program growth and funding need. If you have that, I don't know. Okay. So you can see in my chart that HPF funding has steadily increased, as has the number of TIPOs, and those are both good things, but that results in the average amount per TIPO staying level. So $20 million in 2020 will begin to close the gap. Thank you for this opportunity and for your support.
Thank you. I think you're going to get a lot of questions. Our next